You guys may remember about 2 weeks ago, I brought you guys this news story from pigtow.com. Hopefully, I'm pronouncing that correctly. Where they were taking a look at a patent that had been filed by Samsung and then sort of using that patent to imagine, as you can see here, old patent and new patent, using that information to create a render of what the Galaxy Z Fold 6 could look like. Now, when I talked about this, I said a couple of things. Namely, I said, we can't normally look at a patent and then say, yeah, that's what the final device is going to look like. But we have been hearing rumors for a little while now that the Galaxy Z Fold 6 would be finally moving away from that very narrow aspect ratio, moving to a more square, wider aspect ratio. And this sort of just is another breadcrumb along that path. Today, what I can bring you is an additional breadcrumb along that path. Let's take a look at threads here where I grabbed a screenshot from tech leaker known reputable, especially with regard to Samsung, tech leaker Ice Universe. They said, from now on, my Z Fold leak is absolutely accurate, not based on patent, drawings, and other sources. First of all, the design of the Fold 6 is indeed more square. So while they say they're not basing it off of this patent, it appears to me as though the conclusion drawn from this patent, as well as from other, as I said, earlier leaks, seems to be pretty darn accurate. This is a more square aspect ratio. Now, someone asked, is this similar to the Google Pixel Fold, which of course is not square, but is more of a landscape? It is wider than it is tall. Ice Universe said no, which again takes me back to more square. This is still taller than it is wide. It is more square than before. Again, I think this is going to end up being pretty accurate. Now, frankly, this is kind of one of these bittersweet things for me. I used the Z Fold 2 and the Z Fold 4, and the entire time I said, man, I wish that cover display was a little bit less narrow. Granted, I also would like for it to be a little bit shorter. I think phones in general have gotten so preposterously tall that I think we've kind of lost the plot a little bit when it comes to usability and ergonomics, just my opinion. There's a reason that I continue to go back to the Pixel Fold as my daily driver. And finally, we are getting a wider Z Fold. And now that it's happening, I would say, I don't think I actually want it to happen anymore. My reasoning is because when I wanted that, it was because that was the only foldable available. Now that there are three, I kind of liked it better when everyone was kind of doing their own thing. The Z Fold was kind of the candy bar, right? Then you had the Pixel Fold that was shorter but still as wide as a normal flagship. Then you had the OnePlus Open that was effectively just a normal flagship that opened up. And with the recent prototype leak of the Pixel Fold 2, it appears as though all three foldables are sort of now converging on the OnePlus Open's design, which is probably the best all-around design in terms of wanting to tick boxes for as many people as possible. But for me, someone that likes the variety, I must admit it is a bit disappointing to see. I don't like the idea of everybody just making the exact same form factor. It appears as though all three of these are indeed going to be making remarkably similar form factors, with the biggest differences, of course, being the software that they are running and, of course, the internal hardware, the camera hardware, and things like that. But for me, when it comes to these foldables, the form factor is a massive component because it's not just a slab, right? So everybody being the same is a bit boring. One kind of interesting additional layer to this I can add is the fact that most Samsung users I've spoken to, Z Fold users or people that have looked at the Z Fold in my comments, of which there are thousands, you guys seem to be almost, I'm not saying 100%. I know some of you are totally fine with or actually like the candy bar aspect ratio, but it seems to be almost completely in favor of this change, moving to a sort of OnePlus Open-ish form factor. Now, I do want to point out that if this render is accurate, and I kind of hope it is, this looks like it's even wider than the OnePlus Open is. So maybe that'll happen, and if so, I think that's a good thing. But it's just funny to me that the Samsung users seem to be mostly in favor of this change, whereas the Pixel Fold users who are seeing their phone potentially go from a sort of a mini flagship that can open up into a landscape foldable, transforming that into what is even more closely resembling a OnePlus Open phone. They seem to be almost completely against that change happening. So that's definitely interesting to me to see. It looks like Pixel kind of nailed the form factor and they are abandoning it, whereas Samsung has sort of stuck to a form factor for 5 years, 5 revisions that people weren't all that happy about, and are finally making a change that people, I think, will be very excited about. Something else to kind of touch on here is if this cover display is indeed that tall and that wide, this thing looks like it's going to be just overall larger in general. Adding the digitizer support for that cover display, for the S Pen, would make a ton of sense now. I've seen tons of people kind of clamoring for that S Pen support on the cover display, but I got to admit, guys, with how narrow that screen was, I never thought that made a ton of sense. It could make a lot more sense with this form factor. One more thing that we need to add here at the end of this video, though, is this most recent post from Ice Universe. They're saying that the Z Fold 6 is not as wide as the patent picture. I'm assuming that by patent picture, they're meaning this render that was created based off of this patent. They say that it is relatively wide, and the R angle, I'm assuming that they mean this spot right here, is close to a right angle. If you look for a mobile phone analogy, it's like these Nubia Z60 Ultra, and the middle frame is similar, which is a vertical design. So they are going to be similar, according to him, to this, and maybe not quite as wide as this, but still relatively wide, whatever that means. We don't know exactly how much more narrow to make this. Just something that I wanted to add to bring most recent information in full clarity to the video. Let me give you a little peek behind the curtains here. I'm making the thumbnail for this video, and what I did is I took that render, which was something like this, and I just kind of scrunched it in a little bit, you know, so like maybe something like that is close to what the Z Fold 6 is going to look like, possibly. So guys, once again, as always, I would love to know what you think about this in those comments down below. Does this make you more likely to buy the Z Fold 6? I think for a lot of you, it is absolutely going to do that. People ranted and raved about the OnePlus Open form factor, but I think most of us would agree Samsung has the lead when it comes to that overall software experience. I'm a massive Pixel fan, but even I will tell you that for the average consumer, the Z Fold is probably the better overall device, simply because of all the work that they've put into their software. There's so much stuff going on there. So you take that software experience and you put it into a form factor that I think more closely aligns with what most of us actually wanted. You've got the S Pen there, which is actually going to be, you know, purchasable in North America, where the people are broadly buying your device, or maybe not broadly, you know what I mean. A lot of people are, it's available everywhere, right? And that's not true with the OnePlus Open. I think you have a recipe to have Samsung authoritatively take back that #1 spot in most people's minds for foldables. Granted, in terms of sales, they've never not been #1, but you know what I mean. The OnePlus Open, I think, kind of stole the hearts and minds of people like myself, and I think that the Z Fold 6, should it be going in this direction, could take that #1 spot back, and you're going to see people like the big tech influencers talking about how much better it is. But I'd love to hear from you guys. Again, what do you think in those comments down below? Are you bummed out to see everyone potentially converging on the OnePlus Open design? I know I am, but we could talk about it in those comments. Guys, thanks for watching. Subscribe for more content like this. And until next time, stay nerdy, my friends.